Squash and stretch is one of the most important principles of animation. It gives your object a sense of weight and flexibility. This is to avoid rigidity, which is boring. It makes your object organic, giving it a sense of life and characteristic personality. It is indeed an exaggeration of life because in real life, some of our objects may not squash and may not stretch that much. But if we apply this principle in our animation, it really gives it a character. You can really see if it is a rubber ball or if it is a hard plastic ball or a cork ball. It really defines your material property. For example, you can see here the comparison between a normal animation of a cube bouncing and the squash and stretch principle applied. You can obviously say that the second one looks much more interesting and much more organic and has a character to it, right? In motion design, you can also use this principle to give your object a sense of speed and the emphasization of the path it is moving on. Like in this example, you can see one dot moving from point A to point B in a curved path. But when we apply squash and stretch to the dot and we stretch the objects in its motion, you can see that the path which is on which it is animated on is much more visible. Let me show you an example here. Let's just take up a simple, very simple character. I was going to jump from this point to here, and let us talk about the simple shapes and how we can apply squash and stretch to the animation. All right. So if I go to the next frame, I'll just draw the character without squash and stretch, and you'll see the keyframes. You'll see the main poses, how they are. So on the next pose, he might lean forward a bit. Or something like this. I'll be drawing very rough, so I apologize for bad drawing. And then he's jumping. He takes the leap. Alright. Now he's in the air. Here I'm drawing really rough poses. Okay. The next he's about to touch the ground, and here he hits the ground. Okay, and maybe settle. Let's give him a settle or something. If you play this, it's not really accurate, but you can see that without squash and stretch, or without any principle for that matter. And now here I'd like to say that there are many principles that a simple animation will require. It's not just squash and stretch, it's anticipation. Even in this same example, I can show you anticipation, follow through, or arcs. Like for example, like this path that he's jumping on is an arc. Okay, so objects moving in arcs are natural and real. Okay, it adheres to the physical properties. But if I made him jump, if I would have made him jump like here, straight up and then straight down, like in a sharp path, or like this or this, or maybe here or here, so that would not really seem smooth and fluid, so arcs are very important. Okay, now we are getting ahead of ourselves, so let's just talk about squash and stretch right now. So here now you have seen this example that the character simply jumps, and it's not that bad as a motion, but it's not really animation, it's not really alive, and we cannot see the weight in that character. No characteristics at all. So let us redo this animation here. So now let us draw the same character with squash and stretch applied. So if this is the pose, Now what I'll do is, before jumping, I'll take an anticipation. Now here's another principle again, but I'll make him squash a little bit, squash his form a little bit to make him anticipate. See, you can just see by these two poses that he is anticipating, and his belly, his torso is looking much more organic right now already. Okay, and then in the next pose, if it takes a leap, I'll stretch his head a little bit and stretch his body like this. You can see his body is stretched, and now when you go into motion, if I flip the motion, you can already see this squash and stretch in effect. Then we go to the top pose. I'm just drawing the key poses here. There will be another pose on which his lower torso is dragged behind. Okay, but let's just do the key poses, and then let's make it anticipate the landing. All right. And let's stretch the body for it to reach out to the ground. On the next frame, we'll stretch more. Let's maybe stretch squash more, and on the next frame maybe let's squash his body and then make him come to a settle. So when I play this animation, you can already be able to see much more organic motion in the animation. Okay, so I'll also show you a very simple example on with a ball. Okay, so let's just draw a bouncing ball. So if this is a circular ball, I can just make it go and come down and bounce on this ground and go up and have a bouncing loop or bouncing motion. But if I apply squash and stretch, I'm sorry, I'm already stretching it a lot. Okay, and then here's the squash, and then it'll bounce back up, go back up and settle. Let's have another pose here. Okay, so if I make this a loop, in this frame, you can see how the ball is much more organic and have weight and a sense of speed. Okay, instead of just the solid object. If it is an iron ball, or you say a bowling ball, of course it will be very solid and it will not have much of a squash and stretch. But that's where you can experiment with squash and stretch in every object that you animate. I hope this example has shown you how squash and stretch can be applied to motion design, you can use the scale properties of any object and scale it in X or Y axis to make your animation more organic and have a better feel to it. This is just one principle, and we have 11 more to go, so tune in to the next chapter. Thank you.